Good morning to all of you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you here. As we all know, it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of organizing, a lot of work to get something like this organized. We've been working for the last 2-3 years, I would say. And two of his colleagues came to the conference in Beijing 2 years ago, preparing themselves for this day. So as you can imagine, the amount of work they may have done. So here, both Felix and Gerda and Han has been, and all their colleagues and students have been working a lot of hours. I don't know how many hours, as you would expect and imagine. So let's give them all a big hand to thank them for the great work. As Han mentioned, this is the first time that IRSSM has come to Europe. And I'm hoping that this won't be the last time, and we will come back again as time passes. And the idea, some of you might know, some of you have followed the IRSSM for the last many years, and some of you might not necessarily know the beginning of it. There are some people here who have repeatedly come almost every time to the symposium. The whole idea of the symposium was grounded in the fact that the service research should be improved or should be enhanced in advancing economies. And that's the basic idea. So some years ago, I thought service research should not exist only in developed countries, meaning North America, European countries, and maybe Australia, New Zealand, and nowhere else. And thinking that is not ideal. And I'll explain to you why. And I'll explain to you also why this struck me very deeply. Having come from Asia and having studied in Europe and working now in the US, it allowed me to think. There are many researchers in both European countries as well as in North America who are from developing countries, meaning India, China, Korea, you name it, all those countries. They're all good researchers, very eminent researchers in Western countries. So it is not the beginning of us which is prohibiting us to be known or to be good in publishing or doing research. So there must be something that is not there that is hindering that process. And therefore, I also had an opportunity to edit a couple of journals, both in services. The first one was called Journal of Managing Service Quality. I edited for the last 10 years, and then after that, moved on to the Journal of Service Management. So, as you can see from here, Grönroos and Svensson did a study, and what he found out was that the people who do service research are very limited, and also those who publish in service journals, or any journal for that matter, but in this particular study was looking into the service journals, was confined only to, as you can see, mainly to Australia and North America. Australia, Europe and North America. And that seemed to be very odd. I can't make no sense out of this. Why should, that means more or less kind of saying the rest of the world is dumb and only Europeans and North Americans seem to have the mind power. And that's very, very untrue. I know that very well. And in Journal of Service Management, for instance, you can see the number of accepted papers from advancing countries are hardly any. Since I've been editing for the last, I would say, 14 years now, I could literally count it on my first one hand the number of papers that I've accepted from advancing countries. And that's equally odd. So there is something that I felt that we have to do. Most of the conferences are intended for the people from developed countries, and that's that's not good at all, for everybody. And that's more or less neglecting the rest of the world and saying, hey, we are here, and the rest of the world doesn't exist, more or less. So that was the fundamental reason why I started thinking about it about 5-6 years ago, and approached many people, and many of them were very supportive and to do something for that nature. So I thought that traditional kind of conferences doesn't help. Instead, it should be a get-together of people who are interested in services, who are mainly coming there to exchange views and ideas and to help other people around them. Okay. So my thought was how to connect people who are doing research and who are not doing research, and helping the people who are not doing research, not because of they're not knowledgeable, but because they haven't done it before. That's all. Okay. So there are many ways, just like most of us are teachers, or some of you are, we are studying to become a teacher, and our job is to help people to be better than us, not like us. If a teacher believes that I want my students to be less than me, I failed, already failed. As a teacher, I want my students to be, if possible, 100 times better than me. That's my view, that's my thought. Because I tell my students, if you become just like me, you become unemployed straight away. There's no question. Straight away unemployed, because the kind of thinking that I have is not enough in today's world to be successful. In order to be successful, you need to have a thinking beyond me, or beyond today's knowledge. Okay. So that was the basic idea, and I approached a few people, and we had the first conference in Mauritius, and mainly try to attract or bring in people from African countries. And we were very successful, and that was the beginning of it. And next we had a conference in Indonesia, Jakarta. Noor Idrani is here, was the chair of that symposium. Noor, would you mind standing up for a second? She helped me again to bring the conference to Indonesia and attract various people. And each conference or each symposium, we had somehow or another managed to publish 2-3 special issues in different types of journals, because all of us, if everybody expects to be published in the best journals in the world, that's not reality. We all need to have different steps, and we need to start somewhere. You can't say only if you publish a paper in this journal, you are somebody, and that's untrue, unreal. That should not be the case. So we help people to publish in different type of journals, and so that they feel confident. The more number of times we publish, the more confident we become. And what we believe is the developmental review. That means, if I have a good idea, you work with 2 or 3, senior researchers, and they help you to develop your paper. And I was kind of mentioning yesterday, there were a few people who had been coming to our conference who went through that developmental review. 2 years. It took them 2 years and got published in IRSSM. So where the publication is very, very difficult to get in. So what I'm trying to say is that it is possible. And slowly we will get there. And I'm very hopeful that the reason why all of you are here is, I believe, is the idea that you all believe this is a good idea, and you all believe that this is worthwhile an idea to pursue. And thank you so much for being that. So the future, what should our role be in nurturing service research thinking and advancing in the countries? So we all need to think about it. It's not enough that 2 people or 3 people or 10 people think about it. All of us should think about it. And you, within advancing countries, what can you do to make that process go on? How can we stimulate service research within the minds of graduates and undergraduates, everybody? We need to think if our economy is more than 80% in service growth, then we need to know that our students are going to work in service industry and not anywhere else. Even in manufacturing, we know there are very few people who really get jobs just to manufacture something. But there is service component within manufacturing. I'm sure Christian will talk about that much more in detail. And what support and assistance are we willing to provide to researchers in those countries? And that's where I'm hopeful. I'm hoping and requesting your support. Tell me one person who thinks that you cannot help nobody. Is there somebody who thinks that you cannot help nobody? All of us. Doesn't matter how little I know, I still can use that little knowledge to help somebody who don't have that little. So all of us can help somebody. And that is the reality. And if we truly believe that, and if we are truly willing to give that, I'm pretty sure that we will achieve that. So in advancing countries, the chances or opportunities are not as bright as what it is in advanced countries. In fact, the service growth and the service enhancements are much more intense in advanced countries than in developed countries. The kind of services that we get or have already, because it has been already here for so many years. So my question is this: the real change in our society, in any society for that matter, will happen if literally every one of us understand our contribution and the importance of contributing to the people around us. Otherwise, these kind of symposiums, I don't think it is really of any use. Yeah, Jay might do this for a few years as long as he's alive, but that's not going to be successful. In order to be successful, each one of us have to do something to the people around us. Just even if David yesterday was talking about that one person. Just think about if you can influence one person in your life to convince that person that service research is the most important one, you got it. If you influence one person who do not know anything about service research, and you convince that person, if you are planning to study, if you want to do research, do it on services. And that is enough. If each one of us can do it, I think it is definitely a success. And so far, many people, I have to admit, have helped us to make these things happen. Okay? Many institutions personally have supported this initiative. It is not just because a few people run around this happened, but there are a lot of interest and a lot of support as well. So if your institutions would love to support it, please tell us, and we would like to come and ask you your support to host it, to support some of your students or faculty members to come. Also important, any kind of help. So I think my time is up, and I would like to now introduce a very, very special person personally to me. I met Professor Grönroos maybe about 20 years ago when I was a student. If you remember yesterday at the seminar, at the workshop, I mentioned about that. Mentioned about the importance of attending symposiums or conferences like this. And at that time, the quiz conference was the only conference about services. And I was fortunate enough to meet people like Mr. Grönroos and many other people who helped me. And those thoughts or ideas still prevails in my mind and in my thinking, and nothing has ever changed. And the kindness, the support, and the help, and the motivation, the guidance, all those things that they have given me is the reason why I am here today. And I'm hoping that I can do the same, and you all can do the same to somebody else as well. So if I read Christian Grönroos' bio, it probably will take us the whole day. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'll just point out just very short, important things which I think is important for us to know. Professor Grönroos has been a professor of service management and relationship marketing, started as a professor in Hunter School of Economics in Finland in 1984. And then he served as a visiting professor in very many, one of the top universities around the world where service management is considered important. So I can name many ones, including Arizona State University, Karlstad, CPF in Sweden, and in various other countries as well. And in 2011, he was selected the 11th legend in marketing by the Schiff Foundation, the first person ever named that outside the United States. As one of the scholars and pioneers in modern service marketing, he's the leading scholar in this field and in relationship marketing. He's also one of the earliest proponents of the term service management to describe market-oriented, customer-centric management in service and manufacturing firms. He's one of the early developers of the School of Service Management and Marketing, thought that internationally has become labeled as Nordic School of Marketing Thought. He has published extensively in several languages on service marketing and management and relationship marketing issues. His most recent books on this service and relationship perspective in business are Service Management and Marketing, Customer Management in Service Competition by John Wiley, translated into 8 languages, and In Search of a New Logic for Marketing, Foundations of Contemporary Theory, also published by John Wiley in 2007. Since 1986, he is a distinguished member of the Finnish Society of Sciences and Letters. In 2008, he was elected member of the board of this society. In 2013, he received the most prestigious award for scholarly achievements, the Professor E.J. Nystrom Prize. In 2 studies published in Finnish language, Finnish Journal of Management, about the academic society impact of professors in business administration in Finland in 2007, named Grönroos most influential business professor in Finland. And Nordic Business School Report 2012, he was listed among the most influential business thinkers in Finland. Please join me to welcome and thank Mr. Grönroos to be our gurus, one of our gurus in this world. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you, Jay, for saying that you wouldn't tell everything, but you told a lot. Close to everything, I guess. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the conference committee for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to be allowed to share one's thoughts on a specific issue, especially when you think they are important. And what I'm going to concentrate on is research opportunities that I think follow from one of the very basic reasons why we need to look differently at service, and that is what I call the service profit logic. The service profit logic isn't the same as what the traditional look at the service profit chain. This goes more, it's more fundamental, goes beyond all that. What I see as the real reason why we should not use conventional management concepts and models in service. And when mentioning service these days doesn't mean only service firm, what's called the service sector. It means potentially any type of firm, depending on what kind of approach to the market, approach to the customer the firm decides to take. And of course it doesn't only consider private firms or public firms, it goes equally much for any type of organization, be that in the public sector or third sector, any sector. So, and I'm going to go a little bit back to that. Of course, much of my research has influenced what Jay mentioned here, that the Nordic school of thought, which is in that way quite specific, because the approach is distinctly different, and the beginning was distinctly different, and it still is, compared to the conventional mainstream approach to how do you do research in services everywhere, which still is very much influenced by the North American traditions. For example, we don't think you can test theory if there is no theory to test, meaning you can't jump to positivistic approaches and quantitative research before you know very clearly what are the concepts you want to research and what do they look like. And even the service area has been an area where there's been very little clear knowledge if you go back to the 60s and 70s. And still, we know much more than then, but still it's much we don't know. There's a call for a lot of conceptual work still. And the approach has been very much conceptual, qualitative, based in terms of methods, according to the Nordic school approach. Now, what I'm going to share with you here is both newer thoughts and older thoughts, and some, I think, very fundamental parts of service management that hasn't been properly studied yet, in my view. And you perhaps will be a little bit surprised that I come towards the end. So, let's start with something which I think is important to really realize, is we look at what goes on in the marketplace, or market space, for that matter, in a digital electronic situation, from a customer's point of view. What is really there? What takes place? And if you look at that, we'll always find this situation. There are those who need help and support because they don't have the resources, the skills, the knowledge, the time required to have something done which they considered would be either important or interesting or exciting. Some reason that makes somebody to want something or think that they might want this, need help. And there are those who have the knowledge and resources required to provide that help. Now the first one group we call customers, and the second group we call suppliers or providers. And using knowledge and resources to help someone, to support someone's process, that is service provision. So if you go back and look at what there really is a call for in the marketplace, always and everywhere, in every situation, it's service provision, regardless of how this comes about, regardless of what resources have to be or should be used, regardless what type of knowledge and skills are required for this. It's service provision. So, what customers are looking for resources provided as support. The key thing there is as support, as help, as facilitation, as support to this customer's life, private, B2C, business, B2B, life processes or business processes, that is looking for service. So as a conclusion, in any marketplace, there is only service. There is only service, but this service can be lousy or just mediocre. It doesn't have to be good or excellent in the mind of the customer, but it's always service. Think about that you buy anything. For example, you go out to buy this gadget here, because you know you're going to make some teaching, do some teaching, make some presentation, you want something to help moving the slides up here. You buy a physical product in traditional terms. However, is this a physical product? Well, as a resource, it is a physical product. But for the customer, is it a physical product? No. It is support to being able to more smoothly make a presentation. It's service. Everything is like that, always. Now, if this is too complicated for me to use, it's lousy service. And once I was in a position when I got a new type of, whatever these gadgets are called, I have no idea. I wasn't used to these where you had to put it on and off. I had used one where it was always on. When you put the USB stick into the port. So I tried and nothing happened, and I threw it away. Lousy service. Till I was told that, hey, there is the on-off knob here. And then it worked. So when I got this knowledge, then it became good service. So you see, everything is service. Either excellent service, good service, mediocre service, bad service, very bad and lousy service. As firms, as managers in the public sector as much as in the private sector, we have a choice. Do we want to provide whatever we want to provide to those who need us? As good service, as mediocre service, or as lousy service? It's a matter of thinking, and strategic thinking, which then should be translated into operational processes and managerial support. So, suppliers have a choice. Can we provide anything? Products, service activities, services, information, or whatever somebody needs and this other party has, as service to customers or as a resource for customers' use. Providing a service is that it goes with the information that, hey, remember you need to put it on before you start using it. Providing is a resource for customers' use, providing this without that information. It's just a resource, but it is provided in a way which makes it easily it easily makes it supportive to me and that life process, that process when I'm using it, that is provided as service. Being a service business is a strategic choice. Being a service organization in the third sector, in the public sector, in the agricultural sector, anywhere, is a strategic choice. Now this means, contrary, on the other hand also, that being by definition a service firm, you can still decide to provide your resources for the customer's use, not as service. At least in Finland and Sweden, I know most about in the banking sector, most of the big banks, almost all of them, are not service providers. They provide their financial services as resources, which means that most customers consider these banks mediocre, or what they provide mediocre service. There are some, not very many, who differ from this. And then small banks, they normally provide service to their customers. You just have to, they're small, and it's easy for small. What I'm in this case saying is any service firm, by definition, have made the strategic choice that we don't want to be a service business. We want to be, some people call it product business if you want, or whatever. It is a strategic choice, and everybody can choose either this and that, regardless what the core of your business is. Now, just to see some basic starting points of this, and then move on to the profit logic. This is a model of the service flow. How does service flow from the point of view of the customer, and of course also from the point of view of the provider? It looks complicated, but it's very easy. In the middle here is the customer. How is the customer perceiving, experiencing and perceiving the value of the quality of the support one gets from any firm? The outer circle, called the communication process, relates very much to traditional marketing, external traditional marketing. As you can see, this example of sales, mass communication, direct marketing, and then of course also word of mouth, and these days discussions and postings on various social media and we're supporting them. It's a matter of making promises, much in the hand of the firm and some in the hand of fellow customers, in terms of the word of mouth social media thing here. Now, in the second circle, called the interaction process, is a matter of keeping promises. Now, that's where customers perceive, experience, whatever the organization here, the firm, is supporting him or her or his or her organization with. I mean, these episodes here, the gray pieces here, that could be anything. If you look at the manufacturer, it could be the delivery of the product, installing the product. It could be invoicing. It could be call center response when a customer calls and say, hey, how do I use this? I can't really get it working. It could be maintenance. It could be service recovery, but when customer says, hey, it doesn't work, go up, do something. And how do the firm respond to all this situation? In what way are all these episodes presented to the customer? That's what we are talking about here. And this is a true relationship model, because this goes on all the time. It can be a short relationship, one visit to a hotel and stay there one night. Or it can be an ongoing relationship with the bank or with the supplier of raw material for production line or anything. Relationship looks different, but it's relationship. Now, from the Nordic school approach to relationship marketing, we've always looked at both circles. Conventional relationship marketing normally only looks at the outer circle, because conventionally researchers seem so stuck with the marketing mix that they can't see the real world beyond that. Now, in Nordic school, to be proud on this, look at the real world and not the maps we've written about the real world. My colleague Evert Gummerson once at the conference, when he was criticizing a presentation on relationship marketing, he put it this way. Now, conventional research tend to think like this, that if there's a discrepancy between what we see and the map we've written about what we are looking at, follow the map. And I think he has a very good point there. He's meaning we have this thinking, marketing mix explains marketing. We have this thinking that quantitative approaches with large-scale samples, that's scientific research. So even to realize it doesn't make sense, we still do that. Now in honest school we'll be proud of saying we don't go about it that way. And I would really urge you all to think this. Never be restricted by prevailing thoughts about what is correct research, what is scientific and what is not, what is rigorous and what is not rigorous. And what are theoretical models to build your research? If you feel that this theoretical model that exists doesn't fit, do as we did, put it aside, and start with the phenomenon, and then see, can you bring in something from existing traditional models? So what you do in development. This is risky, of course, but it takes you far if you persistently pursue that one. Now, what's important also to think is I need to be daring. I dare to say that I want to do it differently, although everybody tells you that, hey, you should follow a certain line. You know, at one point when I was doing my PhD on the marketing of service, one somewhat elder, he already has finished his PhD from another university in Finland. He at one seminar, he asked me, Christian, that's very interesting. It's interesting, this research, but when are you going to pick up a real topic that you can do a PhD? Because I didn't follow the marketing mix thought that marketing has to be, you know, really start from the marketing mix and all that. Because I thought the marketing mix doesn't fit at all the service context, and it doesn't. And that's what many of us are going to confront if we want to be different. But be different, it normally pays off. Otherwise I wouldn't be here, for example. Now, what this relationship and service flow model shows just is what's going on in the marketplace. What do we have to create knowledge about? What do we have to understand? What is the starting point for research? To see that this is reality. This is reality always. Now, moving then to the profit budget. How is, in the context of the previous model, the relationship and service flow model, how is profit emerging? From where does profit come? And profit, of course, is revenues minus cost, as simple as that. I'm not talking profitability, so capital is put aside here. That may or may not change the picture to some extent. But let's say that capital is managed successfully enough. So profit is revenues minus cost. Now traditionally, what I call the product profit logic, we look at this, and this is how 99% of all management literature, all management models, management theory, management concepts is built on. Revenues, well, traditional marketing, that is external marketing mix and sales, either seen as part of the marketing mix or as a separate process and function that creates revenues, and all the other business functions that are related to production, to administration, to logistics, to financial, to anything, are more or less costs causing business functions. The only thing we hope for is that the production-related and design development-related activities provide marketing with a product that can be sold and marketed. Sometimes that works, sometimes works less well. And especially in smaller countries, we have this situation that the firm that is marketing a product is not decided upon how it is designed, its technical specification. It's somewhere else. We're just importing it. We're just either agents or importers or distributors. So the product is a given. It's even more victims of this traditional profit logic. But which means that external effectiveness, how do customers perceive us, are based on different functions than internal efficiency. How efficiently does the firm internally function? And this means that revenue effectiveness becomes something that is not related to cost efficiency. Now, when we try to use this thought in a service situation, we get into trouble. Because, as this model shows, there are a lot of episodes on this interaction process that has nothing to do with the marketing mix. Has nothing to do with traditional external marketing and sales. And that do influence the customer's perception of whether this is lousy service, mediocre service, or good service, and whether they want to continue to do business with this firm. Hence, there's a lot going on this interactive circle that have marketing effects. And they all belong to other business functions than a traditional marketing and sales function. They are here. And if we only consider them important for keeping a cost level, then we are going to be in trouble. And well, many folks are. And research, well, we tend to neglect that the service situation is different. So, the service profit logic. Same starting point, but the situation looks like this. Of course, there is still traditional marketing, external marketing mix, market communication, pricing, and distribution and all those things, and sales, external effectiveness is a result of that. However, as the relationship and service flow model shows, all these, well not all, but most of the other business functions are somehow, somewhere perceived on the customers and influence the customer perception of the firm and willingness to continue doing business, that is to buy again and again and become loyal customers and not just customers that come and go and all those things. There are interactive functions, directly interact. There are support functions that will support the interactive function. For example, if they, in a warehouse, put the wrong parcels on the delivery truck, those who have a direct interactive contact with the customer will deliver the wrong things, and the customer will feel, what is this? And wonder whether I'm doing business with the right distributor. So there are supporting functions that are equally important for getting revenues as the interactive function. Then there might be some non-customer influencing functions, of course. Now, what can we learn from this? Well, first of all, yes, external effectiveness is due to how effectively we can make promises through external marketing and sales. However, the other business functions are not only mainly predominantly cost influencing, they are equally much revenue influencing. Meaning that the revenue generation capacity or capability of a firm is very much depending on the rest of the organization, the other business functions, than traditional marketing. And not only on traditional marketing and sales only. Which means that external effectiveness and internal efficiency are intertwined in a service context. And remember, service context, they develop when the firm decides we want to be a service provider. We want to be a service, regardless of what is there at the core of the whole thing. Now, this is the service profit. And this means that we have to rethink almost all business management areas. Marketing management, human resource management, quality management, productivity management, everything, more or less. Because all these areas are based on this profit logic. that the functions can be kept apart and can be managed separately, whereas they cannot, but have to be managed in some other way. And unfortunately, the traditional product profit budget and the management models for marketing, for human resource, for operations, for anything, any business function, has been there since the Industrial Revolution, which means that they have such a steady grip of the minds of people, managers, and unfortunately, of researchers alike. So we have difficulties to break free from the straitjackets of the conventional management theories and models and concepts and measurement instruments. And we continuously believe that marketing is a separate function. Continuously believe that productivity has to do mostly with cost. Continue to believe, and you may add what you will, and goes for most business functions. And we have to break free from that, much more than research has done so far, and much more in practice as well. And business practice is, to a large extent, depending on research. Believe it or not, it is. Now, some consequences. The first one has to do with mental models. The mental models, the grip of the traditional models, so how we mentally think. So we take a commercial analysis of how the profit logic influences the mental orientation of people in the firm and people as customers, as users. We can use two scales. One is this: where's the major focus of the firm and of the customer? On the firm's resources or processes, or focus on the customer's resources or processes? Mind you, you are going to find my presentation on the conference website at some point, not too much after this presentation, I think. And the other scale is focus on revenues and focus on costs. And of course it's a scale, so here we have total focus on revenues, forgetting cost, total focus on cost, forgetting revenues. Of course that's not a wise idea. And here total focus on customer, from the firm's side, no focus on the firm's resources is not a good idea either, because we then really don't have the skills to be able to support the customers and so forth. Now, where mentally, where are the customers normally? The mental orientation of any customer is over there. The customer is very much, of course, interested in his or her own processes. I couldn't care less about the firm process, other than thinking that they can provide me with a solution that will work and help me in my process. And then the customers are very focused on the firm's revenues. I couldn't care less about the firm's costs. Other than, of course, it has to cost something, otherwise they can't come up with a solution that will support my process very well. But customers are very much focused on the firm's revenues, because they are focused on what price they want to pay. And if they want, they all think, do I prepare to pay this price? They want a higher price. Is there something that warrants me to pay a higher price? No, I demand a discount, or I don't pay anything. Customers are always interested in the firm's revenues only. Then the question arises, in this map, where is a firm mentally placed? Where is its management mentally placed? Where is the firm's way of operating mentally positioned? It's an interesting question. My hypothesis is, well, I realize many times, it's steadily here. And of course, a conflict with customers arises. So an interesting and important, very basic research opportunity here that is studied far too little, almost not at all, within the area of service management, is the mental models of people in organizations. Top management, middle management, supervisors, where is the organization as such through its way of thinking and working position for in this case. Then we see where are they positioned. Do they understand the profit logic or not? And why do they position themselves as they do? My colleague Tore Strandvik has a long time been pushing this, that we have to be interested in the mental models of firms, to realize why do firms behave as they do, and moreover, why do they don't understand and seemingly do not accept, at least do not implement, the advice we as researchers provide them with. When we provide them with that and don't do research that is less helpful. But much good research is done. We need, and this is a lot of research opportunities here. And firms that are considered great and that do well on the market, they probably position themselves mentally up here in this direction, are more interested in how do we get revenues because they know enough of the customers, what the customers consider good quality, and just consider and focus on cost. That's something important to make sure that it doesn't start to cost too much so we can't earn money on this. And they know enough about their customers, have done proper research, gotten proper customer insight, and not only interested in their own processes, and then say, hey, this means that this is the service, this is the product, let's see if we can find a market for it, which is far too normal mental model in firms. Now, after this, I want to share a few thoughts on what's called a service perspective in business, to see how does this relate to this or relate to the certain opportunities. Now, service perspective, that is this service logic, service dominant logic thing. The second thing that firms are providing service. The bulk of the literature still we see published talk about service dominant logic, and that's fine if you position yourself as service dominant logic case. And there is a growing literature on service logic. There's a clear difference between these two approaches. The service dominant logic definition is a systemic metaphorical approach, whereas the service logic is a managerial conceptual approach. And let me just a few thoughts say why I think it's like this. So, SDL, metaphorical, systemic, because it talks about service in general, not from the specific firms or the specific customers and the specific interaction between the firm and the customer point of view. It's metaphorical because it uses metaphorical experience as the customer is always a co-creator of value, the firm always co-creates value, everybody always co-creates value. And that's like the metaphor, he fought like a lion. Doesn't mean he's a lion. He has a special way of behaving when fighting. He becomes aggressive, like a lion. Everybody co-creates value all the time. Doesn't mean everybody co-creates. It means everybody somehow are influencing the value process that in the end results in that the customer perceives that, hey, there is some value now I got out of it. That's how I see it, at least. And this is very important, but it points at the fact that, for example, the value chain is something we should try to get rid of. It doesn't function like a value chain. Value is, the customer perceives value because of a process where so many actors are involved in various ways. And the user, the customer, is one key person there. On the other hand, this was pointed out by Richard Norman and Rafael Ramirez already in 1992 in the IRSSM5 article and a book that came a few years later. But this is important to point out. But then there's one problem which I think really is, and we see the result of that. Gareth Morgan, who studied metaphors in management, he makes this point that be careful so the phenomenon you are interested in doesn't get victim of its metaphor. And I do believe that co-creation and value co-creation has become a victim of this metaphor. Because in my view, we cannot study co-creating value as a metaphor. We have to go down on a very conceptual managerial level to really study it. But there's lots of research opportunities based on service logic also in my view. For example, I mean on the systemic level. We're looking at what are the institutions required to support a service perspective in society. And institutions is not only organizations and associations, it's also norms and common thinking and those things. And that's one of the very important things. But then coming down to really how is value created, what are the influences of marketing, in my view, I know there are others who, I'm not sure if they really think differently, but at least they don't say that they say something like that. We have to be careful if you want to study on the managerial level the service perspective with SDL. So what service logic provides is more managerial view, looking at this from the firm and the customer's point of view. Now, the perspectives are the same. They drive the same idea. Service logic defines service as a perspective like this. A service is the application of knowledge and skills on resources and processes to support customers and other users' everyday practices with the ultimate goal to facilitate the customer's life or business process. In SDL, it's the same start, but it ends with from here on for the benefit or of a number of actors. That's the same thing. In my view, it's a little bit too overall for the benefit. It doesn't say, well, why? How, it doesn't say how. And what is this benefit looking for? And I think one specifically can say that the benefit is that it facilitates the achievement of customers' goals. And it works through support. It should result in support of this other person's, the customer's, just some everyday practices that are important. So the starting point are the same. But just a quick difference, there are clear differences, and that's why I just want to say that research opportunities are different. SDL provides interesting research opportunities, but I think one should remember that it's on a systemic level, not on a managerial or customer behavior level. SDL uses varying value concepts, whereas service logic says that value is value in use in all situations, always. Value is always value in use. There's no other value concept that can be used. Because if we in a model use several, in a managerial model use several value concepts, we don't know what we are talking about in the end. If the manager in the firm thinks value is one thing and the customer believes value is something else because there are different value concepts, there will never be a good match between what the firm does and what the customers would like to have in terms of support to their everyday practices so that they can achieve their goals in life better than others. Value creation in SDL, because of the systemic way of varying value concept, becomes an all-encompassing, rather unspecific process, and it's never defined what value creation really is. It's somewhere between the lines. It's just this everybody's metaphorical view. Everybody co-creates value, which should explain what value creation is in my view. Now, if value in use is the only concept, then the SL says that the user's creation of value used, that's value creation. So, taking this piece from this observation that in the value process everybody does something, but creating value in use, that's something the customer does. From which follows other actors do something else that should support then what the customer does. And value co-creation, well, that is interesting. I mean, apparently it is the same as value creation in SDL, and users of firms are always value co-creators, but this I think is the important thing. This is explicitly said in that literature, that the user is allowed to engage with the firm's processes to co-create value with the firm. Frankly, that's something I cannot understand, because that's so
product-oriented as it can be. What are goods logic, if you want to use their terminology used in FDR? What it says is that the firm drives value creation, and the customer can come in and help the firm to create value for the customer. It moves again the value process in the hands of the customer and hands of the firms, the providers, and the customers are somehow allowed to get in and help there. But reality, we know it's in the times of Aristotle, is that value in use is created by the customer, perceived by the customer, felt by the customer, and anybody else can just be there and support. So service logic would say that first of all, co-creation takes place in direct interaction between the parties, where the parties' processes merge into one coordinated, collaborative process. To start there, when the two parties, for co-creation, not metaphorical, but conceptually managerial, it requires that two parties' processes merge. Otherwise, there's no real co-creation. Now, what does merge mean? Well, think about it. You go to a restaurant, and you're looking at the menu, and the waiter also knows the menu. And you say, yes, this looks quite nice, but could you perhaps omit the dessert from this set menu? And I see you having the a la carte menu, that dessert, could that instead, would that be possible? And the waiter will say, I'm not quite sure, Prabhuda, and you go and check in the kitchen, come back and say, well, they have some troubles with that, but they do their best and I think it will work. And then I tell, as a customer, please try. We are in the same process. Our processes are producing the service, the waiter consuming this part of the service, getting the right food, the restaurant gets the customer. We have merged our processes, the production, the construction process into one process. Then is co-creation taking place, according to service logic. And if there's not this merger, it is not co-creation on a conceptual, managerial level. Now, this has the three value spheres. The joint sphere here. Well, by the way, I forgot one important part here. Service logic says that the key thing with service is that the firm is allowed to engage with the user's processes to co-create value with the firm. The user is to drive our value creation. The user is the one who decides whether it is value in use emerges or the value emerges or not. The use is important. And the customer can, if direct interactions occur, can get involved and influence the customer's process of perceiving his value, how is value emerging, and so on. So it's absolute difference in the way of approaching this. And this, I think, is service logic based, really, because we are out there to support the customer. But the service process. From a managerial point of view, service logic claims that we have to look at different phases of this total value process. The joint sphere, are there direct interactions where the merged, coordinated, collaborative process occur? Then we see what can the firm do, how to meet the customer, to make the customer feel even better than otherwise, or what's the case. Then there is a providers where the customer is not involved at all. I mean, there are no direct interaction, and there are lots of that. The firm compiles resources. In service logic, it's called value facilitation, and what the firm is doing is creating enough potential value in use. Potential value in use is, by the way, the same as value in exchange. But value in use and value in exchange are very different paradigms. Value in exchange is based on the idea that the value chain, the firm does this and that and that, and in the end there is a resource where value is embedded, provided that the customer pays money for it. There's no value in exchange in a product if the customer doesn't buy. But if the customer buys, the price the customer buys is the value in exchange. That's the logic of value in exchange. Now that's the same as potential value in use. because of the customer wants to pay money, then we could say from the firm's point of view, that was value exchange. But from the customer's point of view, it's just potential value in use because we don't know yet, is there value for the money we've given to the firm? Therefore, it's important if we want to be customer-orientated, which we should be in all service thought, to not get stuck mentally with the value in exchange thought, but really this is instead, that's why we instead use the term potential value in use in service logic here. But if you take the other paradigmatic approach, it is the same money, amount of money as the value exchanges. The value exchanges tend to believe that then there's value, potential value in use. We say there's really no value in use yet. They're just customers were prepared to pay money because they thought there's potential in what they bought. Now, there are a number of SL articles that said that most explicitly spelled out in the last two ones, the Grönroos and Boiva in the Journal of Academic Marketing Science and the Grönroos and Boiva in the Managing Service Quality. Is anyone who's interested? I suggest that you might take a look at least those articles. Now, this is all put together in a figure. It looks overloaded, but it isn't, as a matter of fact. It's very logical and simple because it says everything I've said already. But let me just quickly walk you through it. This is the value process. And of course, it's not as a linear process, but as it looks here, but just for the case of illustration. Now, this is what the customer does. The firm does. Providers fair, compiling resources to be able to provide potential value in use, value facilitation process. Here is then the potential value in use. Then comes the customer sphere. The customer gets involved and starts to use the service. And their value in use starts to develop. And part of it is a joint sphere where co-creation of value in use can take place. In the article by me and my colleague Johanna Grönroos, we call this co-creation platform. And try to explain that could it be. And at some point, the service provider, the firm, can't influence the customer's process anymore. We leave the restaurant or wherever it is, whatever it is. The product has been delivered. And it's now put into use by the private consumer or by the organizational consumer. And then we get into the customer sphere. The firm has no access to that. But the customer continues a process where value unfolds. Is this really something of value to me or not? And so forth. And it's called independent creation of value in use. However, and I go back to something called customer dominant logic, I pointed out that it's not altogether independent. There are also social value co-creational situations in the customer sphere. And that is when we read through Facebook or look at other social media chat groups to see what do people say about having bought this. Or what do people write about this? Or where I mention on Facebook that, hey, I bought this, whatever it is, what do my friends or anybody who just have access to my Facebook comment upon this? Do they say something positive? Do they say something negative? Do they make me wonder? That will influence my process of experiences. This is how much of a value in use is this here really? So forth, either positively or negatively or neutrally. So that's one process. And potential value in use, that's an output here. Because now, that's what the firm has done independently in the provider's bank. Value in use is interesting. Value in use is not an output. And I don't think we have taken this really seriously enough in research at all. To remember, value in use never exists at one singular point of time. Value in use evolves all the time. Well, at some point somebody stops to evolve and it's there, I guess, yes. But it is a process, a cumulative process. The value in use evolves all the time, which is an important thing to remember. And we talk about Is there any value for the customer? We can never actually say so. What we should say is there a positive value accumulation for the customer during the whole customer's consumption process. And mind you, we don't know when a consumption process ends. The literature has never studied that clearly from a service point of view, at least. Take this example, we go on an inclusive tour somewhere from Finland. We tend to go to the Mediterranean area in the winter, sometimes even further. And when does the inclusive tour, the service of the consumption end? Does it end when we leave the place where we've been spending a week or so? Does it end when we come back to Helsinki? Or does it end when I don't go back to photos anymore and remember what's going to share it with my wife or with somebody else? But we don't know. There's no research that will give us any help in understanding this so far. I haven't pointed out this as a specific research opportunity, but it is. Consumption. Consumption's never been studied. We still believe the old von economic thought that consumption, that is, we destroy whatever value there is in a resource. And when there's no more value to destroy, consumption is over. But inclusive too, the photos are there, they're never destroyed. So we can go back 10 years after and have a look at them. There's been a 2-year break in between this old and last. I mean, this is an interesting and important research opportunity. When does consumption end and when does it start? Time doesn't allow me to get into a discussion on when does it start, but you could also wonder, when did the inclusive tube start? The consumption of it. Or any solution, any service we perceive. Now, the important thing here is, if we really want to study value, how is value created, or how is value coming about for the customer? How is the service provider, the firm as a service provider, how is the firm involved in this process that in the end means that in the best case, positive, favorable value and use involvement process for the customer? What's the firm's role? We can't just say, well, the firm co-creates value. And we can't just say the customer co-creates value, because it takes us nowhere. On the systemic level, to understand what has this effect on, for example, institutions that will guide this, yes. But on the managerial level and consumer behavior level, it takes us nowhere. That's what I think, that the value co-creation has become a victim of this metaphor. So many people try to do managerial level research on value creation based on that, and that don't take you very far, in my view. Here we can just see, all right, we might see what is the role of the service provider. What is the role of the service provider when there are direct interactions with the customer? It's not easy to define when are there direct interactions. What's required for two processes to merge into one process? In the articles we comment a little bit on that. It's not very easy to make a definition of that. And what goes on here when the customer is alone, independent value creation? And how does this customer's ecosystem create social value co-creation situation that influences value accumulation for the customer? And here are lots of research opportunities to look into this. So, let's go further and look at some other concepts, some new concepts that come out of the Nordic school through. This comes from a partly directly from our research at SERS, Hanken, partly from collaboration with CTF at Karlstad University. Customer dominant logic is something that Kristina Heinonen and Tore Strandvik and Päivi Voima from Hanken and SERS, and then together with a few colleagues also from CTF, has been studied. And what they say is that we tend in service research, we tend for granted that we know how the customer is reacting. We know the customer's processes. We know how value comes about. And they claim that's not true at all. And of course they're correct. So they claim a few things. I just want a few, I think, important key things. Value is not at least always created. Frequently it just emerges during the customer's use of resources. In the joint sphere, together with the supplier in direct interactions, or in their independent sphere, or in the social co-creational part of the customer's sphere. Value just emerges, and we don't know what are the processes and the mechanisms of that. And when we talk about value creation, it actually is very production, manufacturing orientated, based on value change, where the firm does this and that creates value, they create value, there it is. And that's really, we borrow that expression. And of course it's dangerous. So we must be very careful when we say how value is created, that we may or may not mean that it is instrumentally created. Now that's one of the things I think we should pick up, and study further from the customer dominant logic thing. And they also made the point that remember that customers' independent value creation is not always independent, and just they've shown that this customer ecosystem here is of importance in the situation where the customer and the firm do not have any contacts anymore. But the customer still is not in customer's value, it's still not only influenced necessarily by how the customers perceive things and so forth. There are still others that come in and influence it. This is what we then call social value creation. Then there is another thing out of the collaboration between Hanken Search and CTF and Karlstad University. It's called customer needing. The basic research done a few years earlier and published 2012 by again Tore Strandvik and Maria Holmlund from Hanken and Bo Edvardsson from Karlstad CTF. They offer a critical view of how firms offer potential value use. What they claim is that frequently the potential value and offering does not meet the sometimes multifaceted aspects of value and use the customers look for, which they call customer needing. And they make a point that this is not customer's needs. It's not what customer needs. It's the customer's whole process of requiring support of various sorts to be able to run their life or run their business. They've studied business to business, but we have a number of master level theses done on this. We'll also study business to consumer situations, and it shows that yes, this is an important point to make. What they claim is that we have to really understand better the customer's processes. So it goes very well with the customer dominant logic as the basic approach. Understand the user side much better. Customer needing is kind of counterpart to the offering. And the offering, but traditionally we say, here's the offering, because we know something about customers' needs, and then we offer it. And very often it becomes just a pushing and offering. We need to start understanding the customer's needs. iPhone, they don't talk, I'm sure, about any needing or so, but the iPhone was developed by Apple. It was for sure based on very, very elaborate understanding of the customer needs. What are people doing? What do you want to do? What could they do? What do they like in life? People of various sorts, where a mobile phone could be instrumental. And when knowing that, it becomes a totally new mobile phone, where making phone calls and sending SMSs and listening to music and reading email were just one small part. The major parts of all the other things, when you put it together into a service perspective, with all other episodes and resources for other episodes needed, with the apps and with all that. They understood this. Of course, they didn't use this terminology, but they used this basic thinking in my view. So, research questions here, based on all this now, this segment here. Understanding the service perspective on a managerial level, I think. But that's what managers want from us. not only the systemic level, how does this look in society, but on a managerial level. What implications for firms follows from this perspective? Mentally for management. What's mentally, how mentally have to think if we want to implement a service perspective? And what does that then mean, implementation in the firm, in terms of how to think about marketing, about operations, about financial aspect, about various other types of functions. And then understanding the value process and really understand it. And I think the first thing we have to put aside then is this, that the customer is the co-creator of value. And make sure that we start to think about what are the specific roles of providers, of customers, and when are there co-creation opportunities. And make sure we can understand the goal and locus, goal for and locus role and nature of value creation from the customer's point of view, from the provider's point of view, and in this joint situation, and see how can we fit all this together. So that is probably, I think, very important thing. To think in terms of the value sphere. And then in the provider sphere, how does firms, can they facilitate as effectively as possible customers, the emergence of value for customers? And then understanding what value customers really are looking for, the customer needing thing, and of course the customer dominant logic-based idea that how does value come about? How much is it instrumentally created? In what situations is it instrumentally created? When is it just emerging? How is it just emerging? And how does it emerge in these ecosystem interactions? How does it emerge in the joint sphere, on the platform of co-creation, for example? And what is as I said here, the value facilitation, value facilitator role of the firm as a service provider. Now, we can get help to understand this, how to develop the service offering by answering all these questions. But if you can't answer all these questions, we really don't know how should an offering be developed. What is service action? How should service be presented? How should a product be presented as a service? How could a service, like a financial solution, be presented as a service? How could anything be presented? So what does it mean? If you don't answer the previous question, we can never do it. Now, offering. Here, then the question is, okay, you come to knowing the background, how do we then understand the offering? Looking at this relationship and service flow model, understanding the offering, well, this is the inner part here. Yes, this inner part here. From the episodes to the customer process. That's the offering. Now, I don't know, but it seems nobody interested in really studying a service offering from a conceptual or empirical point of view since the 1990s. This is what I and my colleague Christina Heimanen, for example, sitting over there, doing in the 80s and 90s, creating the augmented service offering model and then the net offer model for what we then call the market space for the digital situation, electronic business like that. Bo Edwardson did research into the service offering in the late 80s and the 90s, and I think Storia and Isingud as well, who presented an article about that, but that's 20 years almost ago, and since then. So we don't know really how should we handle service as an offering. There's lots of important research opportunities here, I would say. Well, what are the various elements of service offering? How could and should the offering be related to customer needs? And now, when we have this new service perspective research behind us, and in my view, especially if you look at the service logic way at it, on the managerial level, we have so much more steady first ground to stand on when studying the offering, a service offering, than we ever had before. And of course, we can also look at this from the service dominant logic point of view on a systemic level. Offerings on a general level, but that doesn't help management level yet. But that is also important. Now, studying service offering is important for research into service design and service innovation, because otherwise we don't know what to design and what to innovate. And that, I think, is something that a problem with service design, service innovation research is that it's just designing it here, but I'm not sure are we grounding it in the really important issues. So here, in my view, it's important to do it, to start really with understanding the offering before we go into service design. But the important service question here also relates to how is then the offering experienced. I come back to design, service design and innovation too. But service experience, how is service experienced? There's lots of research questions. There's coming out new articles and this, but not very much yet. But there is more, and more is really needed here. And how can service experience be enhanced? And to put it in a little bit negative way, how can it be used? How can we use the possibilities of a new technology, mobile technology for example, to create totally new service experiences that in the best case are considered positive by customers, and in the worst case considered negative? That's also possible, of course. So, but it helps if you know what is the service offering. How to understand the offering, then we know what experiences should be studied. Because remember, service is never a simple experience. If you go back to this relationship and service flow model, there's always a number of episodes, many episodes. But service design and innovation, we have an article that's come in Journal of Service Management with huge number of authors. Katarina Vettarek is number one author. Holly, number two. San Giorgi, Daniela San Giorgi, Buenos Maya somewhere there in the end, because we offer the service logic understanding in all this, to combine service design with service logic, an attempt to go in this direction at least, but it's more kind of the basic analysis of the situation and the challenges and the opportunities. But what's important to remember that there are two approaches to service design and to service innovation as well, but I stay with design now to keep it simpler. We can talk about service design, designing a service activity, but we can talk about designing for service, which is designing a value-supporting process. And these are two different words. Now, much of service design is about designing service activities, and that's important too. But then we must remember that we also need to think about how does this service function. So, designing for service is based on the service perspective. And there are lots of research opportunities there. Oops, not go so far. Designing for service is based on service as a perspective. Which means, again, we can design this physical product for service, equally much as we can design a restaurant process for service. Anything can be designed for service if we make this the strategic choice. It's again the idea, whatever we now are developing, designing, innovating, how does it support the customer's everyday process of practice in a way that helps them achieve their goals in life, or if we talk of business customers, their goals in business. So making this distinction so we know what kind of design research are we doing. Both are important, but we must understand the difference. And what still is needed much more is design for service approaches, because it of course starts from there, that's very natural. But more of that. So as a help, to help this, there's a service design triangle that could be used as a starting point. We just point out a number of the questions that need to be asked. And here's Not everything, but most major questions. And there's the three key actors, or not actors, I guess, these three nodes: the customer, the concept, and the process. And it starts here with the customer first. The customer is more important than the concept. Because if we understand the customer, we can develop a concept that has a much higher likelihood to become successful than if we start from the concept and then try to look for customers for the concept. And the questions we see up there: who's the user, what is the user doing, why is the user doing things in a certain way, what could the user achieve other than they think they could live, how could they do things in other ways? So lots of different questions here of importance. Now going back to iPhone and Apple, it's said, and Steve Jobs often said that we don't know research. We don't do research, market research. We know what customers want because of our technology. But that's not true. I have been told when I've been studying this. In the end, we don't do normal market research. And they've been doing a lot of ethnographic research, understanding what customers are doing, how they are thinking, what they think is important in life, what they could think is important in life, and so on and so on. So a huge amount of knowledge that they had about what could a mobile phone really do to make customers do things they seem to want to do clearly but don't have any real support to be able to do very well these days. What if we change the concept of mobile phone? And the rest is history, so to speak. Then, what can be learned from this is one other thing about research. We don't get enough customer insight through traditional market research. And from an academic point of view, traditional academic research doesn't give us enough information about customers. We need to go beyond that. Ethnographic, ethnographic studies of various sorts is definitely required and important, just supported by traditional research. Forget about the literal stuff, forget about the large-scale samples. They just give you surface information of just a part of what you really need to know about. And remember Israel, and remember large-scale samples when you then have come so far in your level of understanding that you can delineate or frame a very specific question that you need to know about, where you can use these kind of quantitative research approaches and high-power statistical methods. But don't use them because you think that they are the only that provide scientific touch to your study, and they are the only one that are rigorous. I need to quote Eva Gummersson once again. I remember in another discussion about methodology at the conference, he said, you all seem to believe, he doesn't, I do not, many of us from Europe do not, especially not from the Nordics part. You all seem to believe that quantitative studies and large-scale samples are more rigorous than qualitative studies or case studies, interview-based studies. But when you really look at them, they are only more rigorous because we have intersubjectively decided that they are rigorous. And I think it is like that. Somehow we decided collectively, the research community, to fool ourselves collectively and believe that huge sample, that's more rigorous, statistical analysis, that makes it more rigorous. But what if we ask the wrong questions? Or the right questions, but the customers understand it in a very different way. And what about all these biases are combined? We get nonsense answers to a good question. Or in the worst case, nonsense answers to nonsense questions. Use quantitative approaches when they are appropriate. Don't use them because you think they are more scientific and what you get out of them is more rigorous, because then you just fool yourself. So, as a side track, back to service design. Then you come to the service concept. privacy, who to serve, what purpose should be facilitated, what's the underpinning logic. And we could go through using iPhone as an example here, what it is thought about. The underpinning logic here was, but then people want to have fun. People want to kind of be updated all the time about all sorts of things. And without having to make phone calls with some specific person. And all other things. So then you could work up here to what purpose should be facilitated. Then you have to come to the process and see what's needed, how should the process look, what artifacts are needed, and so on and so forth. And service design, especially if we take the approach of designing for service, requires answers to all these questions. Now, there are huge amounts of research questions, looking at everything or looking just some part of this service design triangle. And then we come up with service innovation, and we have the same triangle. And without, taking one step back and starting with innovation. Service design includes an element of innovation always. Now, finally, marketing research, and then a final thought on productivity. There are a few things I'm not going to talk about at all, where huge amount of research would be needed. One is people management. In the service management part of marketing, there comes the internal marketing concept. There's far too little research on that in the service concept. And we need much more there. So that's one thing I'm not talking about, but there really are lots of research opportunities, a need for new research. But they have marketing. Well, just a comment. The model here with the circles, the relationship and service flow model, it indicates this. Customers are influenced by interactive processes throughout the service and relationship process. There are lots of these episodes, lots of contacts with the service provider, and all these contacts influence the customer's preferences, which means that all these customers have a marketing effect. They have an effect on our willingness, interest and willingness to buy again, to be satisfied, to become loyal customers. And as we know, loyal customers normally are more profitable than customers that are new to us. Not always, but normally it seems to be like that. Research shows it, reality shows it. So everything has a marketing effect. Now, an important and fundamental research question is, what is marketing in service provision? Now, I should think that this question should have been answered 20 years ago or 30 years ago, knowing that we've been doing this research for 50 years into this. But again, there is this steady grip of the traditions, the traditional mental models that have crept in the minds of managers as well as academics since the days of Industrial Revolution, and doesn't let us go. That says that marketing is a function. And every attempt to break marketing out of that has failed. The first one was in service research, was made by Lynn Shostak in 1977 in her article Breaking Free from Product Marketing in Journal Marketing. She developed what called a molecular model. What she was saying, just marketing, remember, it is not the marketing mix, it's so much more that it influences the customer. And she basically a model that very much resembles this relationship and service flow model already there. It was cited very much as important art, important thought, and never had any effect on the development of marketing models. Now, then came Bittner and Booz. Bernard Booz was the first author, a few years later, 1982 or 3, with their 7P model. David Cullen, who then in the 80s then was at, well, you don't know which university in Great Britain, wrote the first textbook in English on service marketing. Nobody knows about that in the United States, the rest of the world very little, and of course nobody really knows now because it hasn't been here for 20 years now. But he used the 7P model. And Mary Jo Bittner herself, together with Larry Seithamel and now David Grönroos, are using it in their book, textbook on it. But does it have any effect on research? On marketing? When we research on marketing, do we integrate those 3 extra P's there? Very, very little. And in business practice, in service marketing, are those considered part of marketing? Very, very little effect. I think one of the problems is that they still have the marketing mix approach, that there are specific areas that is marketing areas, and that is not the real best way, I think, to move forward. It helps. Now, I developed, based on research in France by Eric Marchand and Pierre Eglier, the interactive marketing model. You say, let's remember, there's traditional external marketing, but then there's interactive marketing, which is the interactive process, interaction process in this model. First, it was published in 1978, as a matter of fact. So it was before the 17 model. Not much reaction. So, yes, there's a lot of it. Yes, interesting, and it's somewhere mentioned in a number of textbooks, the service market triangle. They've forgotten to refer to me these days, but there's with interactive marketing on one side, external marketing on one side, internal marketing on the third side. Internal marketing was added to triangle by Mary Jo Bittner, by the way. Although the research basically goes back to Len Berrier and also to myself in the late 70s. Now, and to Eglier and Marchand in France before that. Now, it's mentioned, but it doesn't have any effect on marketing. The rest of the books, or even a service market textbook, is based on the marketing mix. And in business practice, marketing is one function that does marketing mix activities. And what's the consequence? Well, the consequence, let me give one consequence. In 2005, there was a set of short articles or comments in a journal Marketing under the rubric, The Renaissance for Marketing, rather with the need for a renaissance for marketing. Stephen Brown, who then was executive director of the Center for Service Leadership at Arizona State University, a sister center to CTF in Karlstad, associate in Helsinki, and older than both of us, by the way. He had made a study of their business partners, senior managers, and had talked about the customer. And he reported this. In this discussion about how do we take care of the customer, how make sure the customers are satisfied, the customer becomes loyal and wants to buy for us. They didn't mention the term marketing even once. And they didn't mention marketing mix activities even once. They were talking about other things. They were talking about, by the way, the inner circle, interaction circle. They were talking about deliveries, and they were talking about customer service as a separate function. It's customer service, nothing to do with the marketing active type of process. And they were talking about other functions. And it just shows we need desperately research on marketing in service provision. What is marketing in service provision? In this book, Jay mentioned from 2007 on research and a new logic for marketing, I made 2 points after analysis and say we can go 2 ways, basically. We can just say, all right, marketing is just related to making promises. Marketing as a function. Let's stay with that. And pray to someone that the rest of the business functions will take customers seriously enough. Well, we can go that way. And I don't believe in that at all, that is serious way. Or then we just can try to really rethink marketing. My most recent suggestion is something called marketing as a customer management, managing the whole sphere of contacts with the customer within marketing. Going back to this relationship and service flow model, which will give an indication of what it could be. And I published a few articles on that. They are a little bit psychic, but not very much, because marketing doesn't fit the marketing mix, such like ideas. So it's sad. I mean, we will remain on this place where marketing doesn't do much good for business practice if we continue the way we've been studying marketing. And it's typical service marketing, it just deviated from service marketing research in the 80s. It started to get involved in service quality and other areas, but basically service quality. And now we study service design, service experience, service innovation when we should really study marketing. Now all these others are interesting and important areas, but we leave the fundamentals open. All this we only studied for one sake, and that is to create one body of knowledge about how should we get customers, make sure we keep customers, make sure we grow these customers into trusted customer relationships where both parties trust each other and the business flourishes and customers are satisfied. And that research is lacking. We do bits and pieces, that's it. So, another thing, this relationship and service flow model also shows that customer is only present in the organization. Customer is present in some most places in the organization. When we take a service approach, a service perspective, we meet the customer meets us in so many places outside the marketing, the traditional marketing function. So customer influence and activities take place everywhere in the organization, and from there follows the research question, how should or could marketing be organized in service position? Academic research has touched this even less than marketing as a phenomenon. There's practically, as I can see, been nothing on this since Evert Gummerson wrote his article, Service Marketing, a Organizational Dilemma, in 1979. No research as far as I can see that. And organizational theory, yes, they study organizational theory, but nothing that would be really relevant for this, as far as I can see, but I may have missed something there. But in service management, nobody has touched this. And it's equally important as understanding what marketing is, to understand how do we then organize. But first we must sort out what is marketing, of course. So there is real research opportunities. Dangerous for a young PhD, yes. But it was dangerous when I started too, so I mean, nothing's changed there. So that's it. Now, just the final thing then, productivity, which is something that also nobody has, well, that's wrong. Very few has touched seriously, because there is once in a while coming out an article on productivity. But you know, here again, productivity is based on this dominating mental model from the Industrial Revolution, which says well, it says like this. The productivity is output over input, but given constant quality. Meaning that we can, in a factory, change the production resources and the production processes that the inputs used without influencing the output that is produced. Quality remains the same, from which follows that customers are prepared to pay the same money as before. So the traditional productivity theory, the models and the measurement instruments is based on these fixed revenues over variable costs. Which means when we study productivity, we don't care about the revenue side, just look at the cost side. And in practice, that's what it becomes. Productivity management becomes cost management. Now, service research has looked into this a little bit, but almost always stayed with this model here, meaning that productivity is cost efficiency. And how do we fit cost efficiency management with service quality management? Now, when we try to do that, we're kind of doing two things that as separate issues and then try to somehow fit them. In my view, we have to look at service productivity totally from another angle. Parasuraman made this point in a MSQ article in 2002, when he pointed out this dilemma here. But he also stayed very much with this. There are two separate things, but we have to fit them together. We had a PhD in 1999 at Hanken Research from Katri Oyasawa. In 2004, they published a joint article on this, so we tried to look very differently on on this. But it's such a huge and demanding topic that nobody's touched it other than from the traditional point of view. And I think we need new approaches to it. Because in service provision, productivity is also output produced over input used given variable quality. Which means, of course, when we change the resources in production and the production processes, the quality of the service that results differs. Which means that productivity service is variable revenues over variable costs, not fixed revenues over variable costs. Which again means that we cannot look at productivity by only looking at how can we manage costs. We have, of course, to be able to manage the whole equation, because the revenue influencing and cost influencing managerial activities are intertwined. So, we have really a need to look differently at this. And the research question that the developed productivity model truly reflect the interconnection between internal efficiency, that is costs, traditional productivity models are concentrating on an external effect in revenues and perceived quality. And then go into the metrics. What kind of productivity metrics will you product? Now here are huge research opportunities. Huge research opportunities. But it is a very, of course, demanding task. I was given extra time, so I've been talking more than I thought to just do this time, so time to say thank you, I guess, and open up for whatever questions or comments there, I'm sure is. But thank you. Thank you very much.
We have time for just a couple of questions, and of course, to extend that we hear a little bit more longer today. So those who have more to discuss or ask him, and I'm sure he will be able to find time to meet up with you. Okay, any questions?
I have a great deal of difficulty. Sorry. Thank you for the presentation. It was great. I have a great deal of difficulty working on any sort of process improvement or design improvement in organisations because of that point that you alluded to, where people are so bound up with a production approach to resource utilisation. Mm-hmm. So my question is, do you have any advice about how to go forward to help people? I think you use the term straitjacket. Get rid of that straitjacket.
Yeah. Start with the customer side, I guess, is one thing. Say, what are they talking about? What are they perceived? What do they dislike? What do they like to have? And they say, what is this? What's the reason behind it? That would be one way. Another way is to start to look at the service processes. How do the service process function? And then one way of finding out that what's the internal problems that makes it so difficult to provide good service quality or good value use, whatever the terminology you want to use that. And from there moving back, okay, what would then the consequences for marketing be? But this is, I did my PhD, which I defended in 1979 and started in 1976. I started to think and say marketing weeks in can't function. I read the few articles there was, and the one book by John Rathmell that existed at that time. The book by Rathmell, by the way, ended with the conclusion that it's feels very awkward to use conventional marketing concepts and model in service context. And go further than that. And then I write, so how do you think? Then but I didn't go to customers. I went to marketing directors, CEOs in service firms, few service firms in Finland and Sweden, and then asked them, hey, what do you like to do to make sure that your customers become satisfied? And what they were talking about, I translated into marketing. And they didn't talk very much about marketing. They talked very much about production. the processes and the people management and those things. And I said, all right, that should be marketing, and develop my original models and the interactive marketing model based on that. But if you start from our existing models, we get into all these troubles, Alison, as you point out, that it's very difficult. Because it's probably in most academic institutions in the world, it's like what I'm familiar with, and that is the only part of the organization, the only department, the only subject or discipline, if you will, who really understands anything about the customer is marketing. So when we start to collaborate with others, it becomes so difficult. But we need to get some kind of collaboration. I have no good answer to your question. This is true. In most universities, you live in such a silos, and that is as difficult as it is for businesses to do rethinking.
First one, as for the cooperation platform, how the channels or technology play in that value process? Like, for instance, like manufacturers, they produce bottled water, and the consumers, after the bottled water is produced and the consumer consumes, and how could consumer give the feedback or co-create with the customers? So, is there any channels or technology play in that service value process? And another short question is, as for the customer's ecosystem, social value co-creation, that part, do you make the co-creation between customers or the co-creation between customers and companies?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Very good questions. The second one first, between customer and other people, other customers, or other, not with the firm, anyone else but the firm, with which the customer somehow interacts through social media or face-to-face or over phone or anything. Yes.
That's what I thought. But how companies benefit?
Cannot. They cannot influence it. They can only influence by doing a good job. So there is a certain positive discussion in social media like that. And it goes back to the old question about word of mouth, because all what goes on in social media is nothing else than extension of the word of mouth idea. But now on a magnitude, it's totally different than before, and with new technologies as a supporting vehicles of it. But it is the same question: how can we manage word of mouth? And then marketers always have said we cannot, so let's forget about word of mouth. But that's a wrong. There's a very good way of managing word of mouth, and that is never make mistakes. And that's the only way of managing word of mouth, really, because any other way is too late when there's negative word of mouth in there. So same goes with the social media co-creation, what goes through media. Try to avoid mistakes, because we know every time a firm tries to get into a discussion in social media, the risk that it will backfire is very high. So. But to your first question, how could you develop a co-creation platform in that situation, so bottled water, to produce it and facilitate drinking when we feel hot or we feel that we need liquid or anything, and when one day we say develop a call center, so we can call up and say, if you want to talk about this liquid, for example. I don't know, but it could be, in many other situations, it would be more natural. The problem again is the mental model, because when you look at how call centers are established, it's normally not with the mental model of boosting revenues. It's developed with the mental model of decreasing costs. So it just blows away, and most call centers do very little good in reality. But again, it goes back to the mental model. Again, understand that we have the right same mental model as customers. then call center will be better. But this cooperation platform, as I said, it's not easy to define what's in. What we have in the article written about is when a customer and us individuals interact, there's naturally opportunity for the process to merge. And also if we interact with intelligent systems, there is a possibility for our process to merge. When a system, internet-based system can react immediately to what I and the other say and do, there is a chance for real interactions. The problem with systems is that at some point this ends. The system can do no more. And most systems are not intelligent. They just do one thing when we do one thing. And that's no value cooperation opportunity according to how we look at it. But drawing the line for where is real managerial, in this sense, value cooperation possible or not, is not always easy. The most important thing is to say that everything is not co-creation. Because then we don't have the instruments to be able to become really useful in development. So that's how I can answer to your question.
Okay, last question, please.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation, and I would like to ask a question. I also know that you were one of the first who defined the term service culture, and you changed your definition a little. It means that when I read it first in 1990 in your very interesting book, the last word was norm, but then we changed and the last word now is value. It means it was really interesting purposes, but there are so few articles or so few researches related to service culture. What do you think, is it also nowadays important topic, and maybe you can say a couple of words, why you changed your definition of service culture?
Thank you for a very good question and a little bit awkward part. I guess I got carried away with this value stuff. Because value, yes, is important part of the culture, yes. But value in more than values, what you think is important and what you think is worthwhile doing, and how to respond to various inputs from customers and colleagues like that. But that actually is the same as norms. So, norm must be there too. And service culture, yes. It's funny how little research there really is about that. And it's an area, it's equally important as ever, because this is the culture, meaning what people talk about, what they think is important in their business, in their everyday life, on the job. Be that a manager or be that just a service employee, contact with customers, is the way the service perspective is implemented through the culture. Of course, managerial activities are needed and so forth, but that is through the culture. So it is absolutely important. And we need more research into that too, yes.
Thank you.
Good of you to point that out, so, because I didn't think about mentioning. But there's so much we need more research. Thank you. Was that last question?
Yes. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.